having a personal relationship with people on your team beyond just business. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people out there, and a lot of team members, they go, well, I'm not trying to be friends with my boss. That's weird. But you've been known to hang out with direct reports outside of work.
Well, we've got, our team, as you know, consists of a wide range of people. You've got folks that are single, you got folks that are newly married, people with little kids, people with grown kids. So it's not like every Friday night our whole team has a bowling night or something like that. We don't do that kind of thing. A lot of our team does hang out on the weekends. What I try to do though is, now that we moved into the building that we're in, we have a cafe and we do have lunch regularly with our team. But what I like to do is once or twice a month, just grab one or two of our team members and go off site for lunch. You're in the car for 10 or 15 minutes. You sit down to lunch for 45 minutes or an hour, you drive back. That's a different level of connection with that team member or with those team members than you will have in a weekly meeting. And I'll do that in addition to. The other thing that has really been helpful for me that I've started to do, and I'm going to do even more of this year, is schedule time in the evening to do dinner with team members with our spouses. I've done that some over the years, and that has been really, really valuable time. So I've actually carved out time every month throughout this year to have a dinner. My wife and I already have time set aside to do a dinner. I don't know who we're going to invite in February or April or whatever, whenever the month is, but we've got that time set aside and we're going to make it a priority. And it may be one or two of our personalities and their spouses or a couple of leaders, or it might even be somebody that's not even on the personalities team that we want to go and spend time with. You can really fast track a relationship and trust by breaking bread with people. And the other thing it gives you an opportunity to do too is say thanks to a team member for doing a great job and brag on them in front of their spouse, which is a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. And, me and my spouse, we've had the pleasure of getting to know you and your family and becoming personal friends. And it really does change the game on the business level, because I know that Jeremy's heart for me is that he cares for me. He wants to see me succeed. And so when you come to me with something, I know your motive.
Right.
And that changes how I respond, and it changes the dynamic.
Well, people think sometimes it'll be easier to have difficult conversations if you're not connected on the personal side or on building a relationship with somebody. But the opposite is true. Having difficult conversations with team members that you have a relationship with and you've actually built trust with, those always go better if you've got that relationship. It makes it consistently much, much easier to have difficult conversations because, just like you said, the person you're talking to actually knows you and knows your motives.
So part of this trust building is we have to kind of gauge it. Do you have a way? There's no formula for this, but how do you gauge if a team member is starting to trust you, if you have that connection?
Well, one of the ways that I do is like in the one-on-ones where I'll typically have a check-in with somebody in the first 5 or so minutes of the conversation. One of the ways I know that's working and I'm connected with that person is I don't have to do that anymore. They just come in and know that we're going to have that time and just have a personal connect, check up with them, get caught up on life with them on the weekend, on Christmas, that kind of thing. So it begins to happen automatically. And I've even had, to be honest with you, I've even had some occasions where I've had team members come in and start to share things that I maybe have to tap the brakes and go, hey, you know what? I may not be the best person to have that conversation with. Maybe you should sit down with, somebody else in the building who I know has been through something similar and have a coffee with them. Or it might even be something that, maybe they should see a counselor about. And that's somebody at Ramsey will help them connect with a counselor. So there may be times where you actually need to gently draw a boundary and go, hey, I'm probably not the best person for that conversation, but I'd much rather them bring that to me and let me do that and help them get connected in the right way with somebody that they should be talking to. But it'll begin to happen naturally and organically, and that's when you know you've made connection with somebody and really building a strong relationship.
Yeah, that's a great call out. That there's a level of wisdom and discernment in the conversation where you have to maybe draw that boundary line and go, hey, I appreciate you sharing this with me. There may be someone better. Let me connect you with that person or HR or whatever the situation may be.
Just because they're going there doesn't mean you need to go there, and you need to understand as a leader where that line is and help them get connected.
So as we wrap here, a lot of leaders this year, they're trying to get better in all of these areas, but the habit of connection may be that pain point for them where they go, I can get better at delegation all day, let's do it. But connection is still that pain point. What is one way they can get better at that this week?
Number one, you just have to decide to do it. You have to know in your heart, this is something that I have to do. It's critically important to my success as a leader and to my team. So you've got to decide to do it. And every great coach knows the key to great coaching is asking great questions. So if you'll have a few questions in your tool belt that will actually help you open up and begin to make connections, that's really important. My team, my leadership team last year went through a book called The Coaching Habit, and it's basically 7 essential questions that every coach needs to have. And if you just have a few of these, I'll give a couple of examples that I really liked. The first one that they talked about in the book, and these are going to seem painfully obvious, but they really work. The first one is simply ask the question, what's on your mind? And when somebody comes in and sits down in your office for a meeting and you ask that question, what's on your mind? They're inevitably going to tell you what's on their mind. That may be something that's happening at home. It may be a good thing. It may be a hard thing. It may be something that's happening at work, but it allows them to take control of the conversation and talk about the thing they're actually thinking about. The second question, which I love and is even more obvious than that one, is what else? And what else? Now, the key is you got to be quiet. You got to shut up and listen once you ask those questions. But I've received some of the most important information on the other side of the question, and what else, that I've ever received in leadership and with kids, by the way. This works with kids. You know, your kid comes home from school. How did school go? Fine. What'd you do? I failed the test. What else? I got in a fight. Well, you could have led with the fight. You know, that was a big, so like that is a really important question that you can have in your tool belt that will cause people to get, because a lot of times they're not going to lead with the main thing they're thinking about. But if you'll continue to ask questions, they'll get there.
And a lot of that is just showing that you truly care.
Yeah.
And people can read through when they're going, okay, you're just checking off the box. You don't really care. They're just asking this because they heard Jeremy talk about it on the podcast. You really actually have to care. That's part of being a leader.
Right. You prove it by listening.
Don't get into leadership if that's not part of it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be quiet and listen. I think so many times when we're asking questions, we're moving on to the next thing and kind of thinking about what's the next thing I want to talk about or check in on, or the next question I want to ask. Shut up and listen.